Romeo, like, I don't care how much success I had, how much money I had, I was still a little kid. 110% to myself. I have these conversations with God. It's like, look, just focus on you, and I'm gonna send that right lady there.
Yes.
You know, but it's just one of those situations where it's like, you know, Romeo is still looking for his Juliet, but it's not about the end game for me. I feel it's perfect time. Like where, you know, they're on the edge of, you know, taking their self out.
Yeah.
I've dealt with that with my family, where it's like, I could be the most positive person in the world, but that doesn't mean your brother or sister or your cousin or your best friend or your boyfriend or your girlfriend is gonna have that same mentality.
Yeah,
So
right.
make sure we check up on our friends.
That's right.
You know, and at the end of the day, all we can do is pray. Like, God is the key, truly.
Yep.
When I was little Romeo, like, I don't care how much success I had, how much money, I was still a little kid Romeo. Miller has always carried himself with a level of class and discipline rarely seen in the industry, but now the latest developments have completely flipped that narrative. A situation is unfolding that has left fans shocked. And many are now demanding answers. I've never gave 110% to myself. I have these conversations with God. It's like, look, just focus on you, and I'm going to send that right lady there, you know? But it's just one of those situations where it's like, you know, Romeo is still looking for his Juliet. But it's not about the end game for me. I feel it's perfect time from an early age. Romeo was groomed for the spotlight, but it wasn't forced. He genuinely had talent. At just 11 years old, he released his debut single, My Baby, a track that shot up the Billboard charts and introduced him as a star in his own right. The single went platinum, and suddenly little Romeo wasn't just Master's son. He was a household name. His self-titled debut album also debuted at No. 6 on the Billboard 200, an incredible feat for someone who hadn't even hit middle school yet. Romeo quickly became the face of a new generation while his father was teaching business hustle and independence through No Limit. Romeo was carving his own path through TV and music. His Nickelodeon show, Romeo, aired from 2003 to 2006, giving fans a glimpse into a fictionalized version of his life. He played a teenager balancing music, school, and family, mirroring the very life he was actually living behind the scene. But unlike many young stars who crumbled under pressure, Romeo kept his image clean. He was respectful, focused, and never seemed caught up in controversy. Parents trusted him, kids looked up to him, and the industry saw him as proof that a child raised in fame didn't have to fall into trouble. But while the cameras captured his smile, few knew the shadows he was already facing at home, and in his heart, it's hard to deal with somebody where, you know, they're on the edge of, you know, taking their self out. I've dealt with that with my family, where it's like I could be the most positive person in the world, but that doesn't mean your brother or sister or your cousin or your best friend or your boyfriend or your girlfriend is going to have that same mentality. So make sure we check up on our friends, you know, and at the end of the day, all we could do is pray like God is the king. Truly, I see long before the platinum plaques and TV deals, Romeo had already experienced a deep and painful trauma, one that would silently shape the man he was becoming at just 8 years old. Romeo witnessed the unthinkable. A cousin close to him like a sibling died in a tragic accident. Right in Romeo's arms, it happened in a car crash that Romeo himself narrowly avoided. He had been planning to get in the car that day, but changed his mind at the last minute. That decision likely saved his life. But surviving didn't mean escaping the pain. Watching someone you love take their final breath leaves a scar that never fully heals, especially at such a young age. Romeo later admitted that the experience left him with questions, fears, and a deep sense of loss. While kids his age were just learning multiplication tables, Romeo was learning about grief, guilt, and the fragile line between life and death. This trauma forced Romeo to mature quickly. He wasn't just the kid on magazine covers. He was a boy who had already felt the weight of loss. Most adults hadn't. And while he was performing on stage and filming scenes for television, he was also quietly carrying this emotional burden in the background. It shaped how he viewed the world and the people in it. He became protective, cautious, and more spiritually aware. It also made him value life in a different way, focusing more on purpose than popularity. Even in interviews, Romeo has often spoken about the importance of family, peace, and mental health, topics that many of his peers didn't touch on until much later in life. And that's no coincidence. His early brush with death gave him perspective. It's part of why he stayed grounded in an industry that often pulls young stars in the wrong direction. And just when life seemed to offer him a second chance, tragedy came knocking again. In 2022, Romeo's younger sister, Romeo Miller, passed away at just 29 years old from accidental fentanyl poisoning. It wasn't just a sudden demise. It was a devastating moment that shook the entire family to the core. Titiana had struggled with addiction for years. Romeo and Master P had both spoken openly about trying to help her get clean. She had even appeared on Growing Up Hip Hop, where her battles were shared with the world, and it was clear her loved ones were trying hard to guide her toward healing. But addiction is complex and unpredictable, and despite the love around her, the addiction eventually won. Romeo's response to her demise was raw and emotional on social media. He poured his heart out in grief, speaking about the pain of losing someone so young, so full of life, and so close to his heart. It wasn't just about mourning Tiziana. It was about mourning everything she could have been. He called her his angel and spoke of how much her smile, her soul, and her struggle had shaped him. It was the kind of loss that doesn't just break your heart, it changes your entire world. But as the family tried to mourn, the grief quickly turned into something even more painful. A public fallout. Romeo and his father, Master P, began clashing on social media, arguing not just about Tiziana's demise, but about money, family priorities, and years of unresolved emotional wounds. Romeo criticized his father for lack of transparency, both emotionally and financially. He suggested that Master P had focused more on public image and business than on the deeper needs of the family. He wrote that it was painful growing up in a house that looked perfect on the outside, but where emotional support was lacking. Master P
A lot of us in a very terrible car accident. And I keep it very public because if you really know about life and the Bible and God and how the devil works, the devil can attack what you don't speak, right? That's why the power of the mouth, pause, get that out there. Ladies and gents, we're trying to do something positive right now.
In May 2024, Romeo faced another life-altering moment, this time with his own life hanging in the balance. He was involved in a serious car accident, one that left his body battered and broken. The crash resulted in severe spinal and neck injuries, and for a terrifying period, Romeo lost the ability to walk. It was a moment that could have ended everything. The same boy who once danced on stage, played basketball at USC, and lived life in motion was suddenly confined to a hospital bed, struggling to move, to breathe normally, to even sit upright without.
He responded with his own posts, defending his parenting and expressing disappointment over Romeo airing their issues online. He said he had done his best as a father and felt hurt that his son was turning against him during a time of such immense loss. The feud wasn't just painful, it was public. Fans who had grown up admiring the bond between father and son were now watching that bond crumble in real time. For Romeo, Tiziana's demise opened the floodgates. It wasn't just about losing a sister. It was about confronting everything the family had been pushing under the rug. Pain that had been buried for decades was finally spilling out. He wasn't trying to tear his father down. He was finally speaking up for himself. His truth and the emotional reality that fame and fortune had never been able to fix. The pain was unbearable. But what came next would nearly break him physically. My life actually changed a lot. I was in a very terrible car accident, and I keep it very public because if you really know about life and the Bible and God and how the devil works, the devil can attack what you don't speak, right? That's why the power of the mouth, pause. Get that out there, ladies and gents. I'm trying to do something positive right now. In May 2024, Romeo faced another life-altering moment, this time with his own life hanging in the balance. He was involved in a serious car accident, one that left his body battered and broken. The crash resulted in severe spinal and neck injuries, and for a terrifying period, Romeo lost the ability to walk. It was a moment that could have ended everything. The same boy who once danced on stage, played basketball at USC, and lived life in motion was suddenly confined to a hospital bed, struggling to move, to breathe normally, to even sit upright without pain. The injuries were more than just physical. They shook him mentally and emotionally in a way he hadn't experienced before. Romeo began months of painful rehab each day, brought small victories, lifting a leg, sitting without assistance, taking a single step, but the process was slow, grueling, and humbling. He shared glimpses of his recovery on social media, showing fans the reality behind the recovery, the therapy sessions, the tears, and the toll it took on him as a man who had always appeared strong. But it wasn't just about learning to walk again, it was about rediscovering who he was during rehab. Romeo wasn't just trying to heal from a crash, he was healing from years of internal pain. The trauma of his cousin's demise, the grief of losing his sister, and the emotional fallout with his father, all of it came back during those silent, difficult days of recovery. Still, Romeo refused to give up. He leaned on his faith, his daughter, and the few people who had stood by him through everything. And slowly, step by step, he began to regain strength. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't for headlines, but it was real, and Romeo's spirit kept rising. Masterpiece, daughter, Tatiana Miller found dead at 29. Sorry to hear for your loss. They hinted towards mental illness and substance abuse, but didn't say the exact reasons for her death. Hope everything gets better. Just when it seemed like Romeo was finally finding his balance again. 2025 delivered another harsh blow. In early spring, word began circulating that Romeo had suffered a relapse in his spinal recovery, a serious setback that forced him back into treatment. He was experiencing severe nerve damage that made it hard to stand for long periods, let alone walk unassisted. Those close to him said the pain had returned worse than before, making everyday activities feel like battles, but that wasn't all. Around the same time, rumors began swirling about a betrayal in his business circle. Sources close to the situation claim that someone Romeo trusted with managing one of his companies had misused funds, leaving him to pick up the financial pieces. While Romeo hasn't directly addressed this, he's noticeably stepped back from public appearances, tied to that brand, fueling speculation that some